Hope everyone is having a great start to their work week from the American Digital Network studio. I'm Haley Outen. Thanks for tuning in to an all-new segment that will be featuring each Monday leading up to the men's basketball tournament. I'll be joined by some company here in the studio. I know UCF fans know him, the one, the only, Mike O'Donnell, who will be joining our coverage in Hartford the first week of March at the men's basketball championship. How you doing, Mike?
I'm embarrassed but excited about that opening. I really appreciate that, Haley. Thank you.
Mike, I know you've had a chance to call several games around the conference this season and have gotten to witness firsthand the competition across the American. But let's start off by talking about a team that's getting quite a bit of national attention, especially after this past week. Cincinnati wins a hard-fought battle on their home court against Xavier, then puts on an absolutely dominating performance against USF, winning that one by over 40 points. On the national scale, how legit is this Bearcats team?
Well, legit enough to where this is probably Cincinnati's best team in the last 10 years. And quite honestly, it's probably Mick Cronin's best team he's had at Cincinnati. They are the real deal. They're ranked 14th in the polls. Just about every poll, they're in the top 15. And that's for a reason, because when you think about Cincinnati, you think about defense always first and foremost, but now they can score. I really like they have four intangibles that's making them so good this year. They're great at defense. We know that. One of the tops in the country, and their physicality is off the charts. It's very hard to simulate that in practice. The second thing is that they're rebounding. Anytime they step on the floor, Cincinnati has a chance to double up their opponent in rebounding because they play so hard and aggressive, including the offensive glass. And their offense is much improved. You have Troy Copain, who's a great shooter and a big shot maker, and then you add transfer Kyle Washington in, who plays inside and out and is in a serious mismatch problem for most teams. I love those three aspects, but in the fourth, they have great leadership. I go back to the man, the big shot maker, Troy Copain. He knows how to make and take big shots late in the game. He's the leader on the floor, in the huddle, in practice, in the locker room. He does it all. Any team or coach in the country would kill to have a player like Troy Copain and his leadership on their team.
Yeah, and we're heading to Hartford in a little over a month, which is just down the road from Storrs, a very ideal tournament location for the UConn Huskies. But it's been a tough season for Kevin Ollie's group. Injuries early on, quite a few young players having to step up, but they have won their last three. It hasn't always been pretty, but they're starting to see some positive results. Are the Huskies finding a rhythm at the right time of the season, something that we've seen them do in years past?
Yeah, I think so. And there's no sugarcoating it. UConn really struggled early on. The first 10 games of the season, they did not look good. And I think Coach Kevin Ollie would admit that. They have incredible individual talent, but they didn't seem to gel and put it all together. However, winners of last three games is UConn. The Husky family is really starting to enjoy the way this team is playing. Right now, they only have 6 healthy scholarship players available. But the combination between Brima and Facey in the front court has been a force the last couple of games. And then you add that to Adams and Purvis are playing lights out from the perimeter. So the backcourt and front court is starting to gel. There are players that are logging heavy minutes, including Adams and Purvis. They sit 1 and 2 in the conference in minutes played, just over 36 minutes, but they're also in the top 20 in scoring, so they're producing with those minutes. So the combination between the front court and the back court is light years better than what it was about 10 to 15 games ago for UConn, hitting their stride at the right time.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you see some of the ground UConn has made up in the standings. They're sitting at 5-4, tied with UCF to start off the week. But if you take a look at the standings as a whole, it's an extremely tight race, especially in the middle of the pack. While UConn is tied for 6th with that 5-4 record, third place Tulsa is a 6-win team in league play. You throw Memphis and Houston, 2 other 6-win teams in conference. Who do you see emerging from the middle of the pack?
You know, there's essentially 4 or 5 teams that could pose a threat for that third spot in the American, because quite honestly, I don't see anybody surpassing Cincinnati or SMU for the first and second spot. That's certainly a possibility, but I just don't think a real possibility right now. But if you look at the teams right now, Tulsa sitting 3rd in the conference. They're playing lights out basketball. Very, very young team. Started out a little shaky earlier in the year, but Coach Frank Haith has his team playing well at the right time. They're a great rebounding and defensive team. But we're going to find out if Tulsa is for real in these next upcoming games. They have Cincinnati, SMU, Memphis, and Houston as their next 4 games. So the Golden Hurricane will be tested coming up in the next few weeks. I also really like Memphis sitting in that 4th seed. They are one of the best offensive teams in the country, and they don't turn the ball over. I love the way that this Memphis team plays. Sitting at 6-3 as in a conference record. They're tied with SMU in assists per game with almost 17 assists per game. That is unselfish basketball. And they have one of the best players in the conference in Dedrick Lawson, who could be a potential lottery pick in the NBA draft. He is a dynamic player for Memphis. I also really like Houston. Sitting in 5th place, hanging around. A lot of people thought Houston was the 3rd or 4th best team in the conference coming into media day earlier in the college basketball year. They're sitting at 6-4, but they rank in the top 3 in the conference in scoring offense, field goal percentage, and 3-point percentage. And they have the best quote-unquote scorer in the American Conference in Rob Gray Jr., getting over 20 points a game. He is as a dynamic of a shooter and scorer as I have seen in the country all year. He is the real deal. Very hard to stop, Rob Gray Jr.
Yeah, this week sees some interesting matchups that can make a tremendous impact in the American standings, highlighted by a game that, or 2 games rather, that you mentioned. 3rd place Tulsa meeting 1 and 2, Cincinnati and SMU. But which other matchups should fans be tuning into across the board this week?
Well, I really do want to highlight again a huge week for Tulsa. They host Cincinnati Wednesday on CBS, and then they have to host SMU Saturday on ESPN News. Those are 2 tough games. It's number 1 and number 2 in the conference that you have to line up against. So we're going to find out if this Tulsa team is for real. They have to come ready to play both nights. Good thing that both games are at home for the Golden Hurricane. The other game that I really like, though, is the UCF at Houston game. That takes place on this Wednesday on ESPNU. It's a payback game for Houston. A couple weeks ago, they lost to UCF in Orlando in a really tough, hard-fought game. Rob Gray Jr. had 20 points that game, but it wasn't enough for the Cougars as they proved to come up short against the big UCF Knights front court. But that is a fight for 4th place. That game should be an absolute dogfight in Houston, Texas.
All right, Mike, and halfway through the season, I want to pick your brain on some midseason accolades. If we were heading to the tournament tomorrow, who in your mind has been the most dominant player on the floor so far this year?
I know you're a soccer player, Haley, and you love ties, but I don't like ties at all. But I have to give a tie to Dedrick Lawson and Rob Gray Jr. Those 2 players have been indispensable for their teams, and they're giving opposing teams headaches. Lawson for Memphis is a lottery pick. He is really, really good. Plays inside and out, can guard 4, sometimes 5 different positions, an absolute threat from anywhere on the floor. Rob Gray Jr. is one of the best scorers in the country. He just finds ways to get buckets. He can shoot the 3, can get to the rim. He has a mid-range game, very difficult to stop. So far in conference, nobody has stopped Rob Gray Jr. scoring. So for me, right now it's a tie, neck and neck between Lawson and Gray Jr. for Player of the Year.
All right, well, both players have had outstanding seasons up to this point, so I think in this situation a tie might be acceptable.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Michael, we'll see if your predictions hold true in just a few weeks' time. Thanks for joining Mike and myself today. We'll see you next Monday.